everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News website, and we've got another of our interviews with executives from junior mining companies. And what we have today is Sterling Metals. Sterling is involved in Newfoundland, where there's a big gold rush going on with lots of exploration success. And these guys have at their Sail Pond Silver project, they recently put out some really good news on their silver project in Newfoundland. So they still have a modest valuation. Wanted to get the guys on to talk. Today we have Matt Wilson and Kelly Malcolm. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Always a pleasure, Allan.
Great to be here, Allan. Always fun.
Well, you know, he got the good stuff to talk about. 144 grams of silver equivalent over 12 meters, 850 grams silver equivalent over a meter, 1,202 grams over 0.75 of a meter, 963 grams over 1 meter. And you guys are just early in understanding the system. Kelly, tell us a bit about it.
Sure. So we reported those numbers as you just read them, but Matt and I were debating actually quite a bit how to put these numbers to market, because what's really interesting to me about this project is that the scope of the system. So on a few of the holes, we could have put an ounce of silver over 100 meters. Actually, not a few, on many of the holes. Sorry, an ounce of silver equivalent. We ended up tightening it up a bit, looking more at the concise zones. But the really exciting thing is that we are seeing a system that is kilometric in length, drilled down to several hundred meters depth, and has a width of at least 80 meters, and I would say more like 150 meters if you look at that lower grade halo. So or not today's, but last week's results represent the first real comprehensive look that we've had at this project in 3 dimensions. As we had talked about previously with you, Allan, there's a lot of surface mineralization. As you know, in these types of systems, you can cherry pick some of the high grade stuff. You can find grades in almost any environment if there's a bit of sulfide at surface. We had a huge soil footprint. But 2021 was the first time that this portion of Newfoundland has ever seen a drill hole. And I would argue that we were very successful in outlining something that is sizable, significant, and has the potential to become a serious part of Newfoundland's mining history.
Yeah, you know, it wasn't lost on me, Kelly, the size of that geochem anomaly and sort of the structural story that's starting to emerge. And now you guys are sort of putting the truth machine to work. And, you know, you've had a couple good rounds of drilling.
Yeah, and sorry, Matt, I won't take away all your thunder, but what was really funny about this project is Matt bought it and did the deal, and we got the ball even rolling. We were drilling on the property before anyone from Sterling had ever actually visited the site. So we were fortunate that we found very reliable contractors. We were fortunate that we bought the property from Altius, who has a stellar reputation, not only in Newfoundland, but in the mining industry in general. So we knew we were buying something with real potential. We weren't getting hoodwinked or anything, but I didn't get to go on site until the middle of June, after we were on our 18th hole. Was the first hole that I got to go on the ground and stick and say, this is where I want to drill. So yes, it was one program, but the first 15 holes were truly scout holes. We were testing along that 12-kilometer trend, popping holes in the ground. We put out some of those numbers. Hole 8 and 18 and 23 in particular were quite exciting. But the latter half of the program, which started sort of July 15th or something until the end of the season, was focused on this new Heimdall zone. And really, we started to get an actual feel for what's going on under the surface. So yeah, definitely, like you said, multiple phases of drilling. Although it was one program, our knowledge base dramatically changed, and our focus therefore changed through the year.
Well, let's shine some light on our man Matt there. And Matt, tell us a little bit about how you got such a good project from a strong team at Altius. They did a lot of great work there and exposed a large geochem anomaly. And Kelly's pretty good at picking holes. So let's start talking a bit about how this came to be.
Yeah, I think that Altius did a lot more than just find the geochem anomaly. One of the things is great and frustrating at the same time is they also did a bunch of trenching, bunch of samples from outcrop. I mean, the outcrop runs for 12 kilometers, and I mean, just for some perspective there, I had some shareholders reach out and say, you know, what does that look like? How big is that? And like, what does that really mean? Because, you know, every company talks about their land package, right? Their land package is 40,000 hectares, 100, whatever it is. This is actually mineralization in the host rock that we're looking for in a specific formation of 12 kilometers long. So it's multiple deposit possibility along this 12 kilometers. So how long? That's half of Manhattan. Or it's from
it's Scarborough
Lake Ontario to the 401, stretched from basically University Avenue to Yonge. I mean, you're talking about something, and that's all mineralized. So Altius kind of uncovered that. That's what they brought to us, right? And I mean, they found us channel samples in trenches that were 1 meter long of 1,000 gram plus equivalent. And I guess what's really interesting about this project is that, you know, the more I look into other silver projects around the world, especially the good ones, is that, you know, stuff like that would be mined, you know? Stuff like that would be, you know, a meter of 500 grams, like that stuff is mined down in Mexico, in Peru. Like people are doing that in the 1800s.
Actually, in Mexico, here where I live, you know, you're talking, and I live in the center of the silver mining district of Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
You're talking about 300 grams is, you know, sort of the cutoff, and anything above that gets mined. Well,
yeah, so that's why I think we get so excited, and Altius put that together, right? I mean, they put that all together for us on surface. It just hadn't been drilled. And so, you know, the way it formed was a former colleague of mine runs the new royalty book there, and he and I and Kelly were actually out playing a round of golf when, you know, we had kind of some COVID lightening up restrictions in 2020, and, you know, after a couple beers, you know, I was looking for a new project, and Mark, who's also a technical advisor of ours, he just says, you know, we have this project that silver was $12 when they were trying to do it. There was a great deal they did with Newfound Gold, but then Newfound found Queensway, and so gave it back to them. And, you know, it just kind of happened to roll into us. But like Kelly said, you know, we were drilling, not blind, but we did a lot of drilling. We did a lot of drilling with not a lot of information in our hands. And so I think that even more than thinking of it as multiple phases of drilling, that first phase of drilling is like covering 50 years of possible, you know, startup exploration that usually happens in this program. But now that we've found this body of mineralization, now that we've found actual veins that are of a width that you can kind of assume is continuous, that again would be mined if you were in a silver district that you can kind of chase, we get really excited for this next program, because it's kind of like we you know, there's skill and luck that gets involved with that, and we're really pumped to get going now, because we have like kind of a treasure map going that doesn't just kind of help us expand this zone, which is going to be great down plunge, along strike, things like that. But also, if you take a look at the press release, it talks about the structural controls that show multiple spots around this, you know, Lake Ontario to 401, this half of Manhattan, that shows that you can have, you know, the same thing multiple times. So the more you figure out here, the more you can say, oh, look, it's going to happen many, many times over, which is why we kind of use that string of pearls deposit analogy, and that this is really just like the top tip of the first pearl along that string of pearls.
you know, another thing.
The cool thing is the stratigraphy and the geology for that whole 12 kilometers is the same. There's no change in the geological environment along that whole sort of north-south trending structure. So lots of chance to repeat what we found here, either repeat or exceed in the second, I guess call it the third phase of drilling, which will be the start of our 2022 program whenever we get that launched in the coming months.
As Matt was explaining some of that stuff, it also strikes me that, you know, a lot of these vein systems down here in Mexico are generally 1 to 2 kilometers along strike, maybe 1 to 4 meters of width, and about 200 or 300 meters of depth. You could fit a bunch of those in your system there that's been exposed with outcrop at surface.
Yeah, Alan, I was taking a look actually at like the top 20 silver, like primary silver mines in the world. You know, they're primarily spread between Mexico and Peru, a couple in Russia. You know, the vein widths for most of them is, you know, they're mining everything from 0.5 meters up to, you know, the really good stuff of 7 meters. And the average grade of silver is, you said it, 300 grams per ton. That's the average mill grade of the top 20 producing silver mines, or among them. And then the equivalent grade is 500 grams, right? And so, you know, you see something like Vizsla come out with a resource that's 7 million tons today at 350 gram equivalent. That's a mine, right? That's really great. And so we're here with grades in these veins that are, you know, 1,000 gram equivalent. And then you've got this broader zone that's 150 gram equivalent. That's this kind of corridor. And I think that, you know, you're looking for either as soon as these things kind of broaden a little bit, then those veins or the area broadens, then you're starting to look into a pretty favorable project.
Yeah.
And also as we get deeper in the system too, you might get some tightening up of this, like I said, we have this 100+ meter width of mineralization. Who knows what happens at depth? Maybe it tightens up a wee bit. Those fluids get a little more focused and we get higher grade, narrower zones, which is always a fun possibility at depth.
You know, another thing to put it into context on the worldwide mining of silver, 2 of those highest profitable mines are about 50 miles from me. One is in Fresnillo, mined by Fresnillo PLC. The other is the joint venture between Fresnillo and Mag Silver. And Mag Silver now has their Juanicipio mine in production. I think the average grade is 360 grams. And there again, the dimensions are 1 meter of strike, 1 to 4 meters of width, and about 300 meters of depth. And that makes those 2 the highest profitable silver mines in the world. So you guys are definitely in the ballpark. Kelly, you know, you and I have been around the block a while, and some of the things that we always talk about are continuity of grade and predictability. You know, you guys have really hit the ground running with your scout drilling, and I assume that you think that will help you in your predictability of drilling going forward and the potential for continuity. Talk to us about that, Kelly.
Yeah, sure. So yes, I totally agree. It's always massively important. Honestly, the drilling surprised me a wee bit. I was thinking of a little bit of a different deposit model when we first got into this. I remember talking about these gravity anomalies. I thought we might find some MVT style pods. What we're seeing here is truly a vein hosted high grade system with bleeding out from those veins into the surrounding wall rocks. We have now found continuity from hole to hole on several sections, about 100 meters of continuity to date of these high grade veins with surrounding lower grade halo. So certainly needs a lot more drilling to fully validate that, finalize it, link all these things together. But we genuinely are seeing a correlation of these vein sets. We put some photos in the press release that show that, and we also put I'm on my cell phone here. We also put a longitudinal section in, which is kind of early for the first drill campaign, but we show a continuous, shallowly plunging, northward trending zone of low-grade broad mineralization. And in further press releases, we'll look to present the high-grade mineralization in a similar fashion. And you should be able to see the continuity that we are seeing in 3 dimensions as well.
You know, Kelly, one thing you're saying there, and this is sort of consistent with a lot of these high-grade systems, is that for continuity along strike and at depth, you know, you have to understand a little bit about the power of the mineralizing system. And for you to be getting high grade in the veins and it's spilling out into the country rock, I think says something about the power of that mineralizing system.
Yeah, so the first time I finally went to the project, like I mentioned in the summer, I called Matt and I was giddy because I cannot wait to have an investor tour or an analyst tour out to this project, because when you walk on the ground it's a smattering of sulfide mineralization on all of the outcrops. It's a sea of white, which is the carbon or dolostone host rock, and blues and greens and reds from all the copper and base metal and silver exposure. And it is a big system. There's a lot of fluids that have been flowing. We had some really great geologists involved here. SRK came up and did a 10-day visit on site, trying to understand the structure, the fluids, the ore forming system. And even for them, who literally do this for a living, it was quite a complex system and something that's really positive. However, it can be difficult to understand in the early stages, is that it was not one structural event that brought the mineralization into this system, but in fact, it was a bunch of different events from different orientations with different fluids that brought all of these different metals. And I know we're talking about silver here, but don't forget there's high-grade copper, high-grade lead, high-grade zinc, weird one, high-grade antimony, which is, who knew, quite a valuable metal as well. It's actually kind of in the same range as copper. And that accompanies the silver mineralization. So it's truly a polymetallic system, but driven, I would say, at least in the results to date, that the value of the rock is driven largely by silver and maybe copper as well.
You know, as you were explaining that, that's another characteristic of what you see in these mines is multiple phases tend to be long-lived mineralizing systems. And I'm sure you're seeing that in your drill core.
Yes, honestly, we're seeing some weird stuff. We had such a fun time getting all these, because again, we weren't there for 20 holes, but seeing the photos come in, and I like playing it with everything in 3D. So trying to look at where does this vein fit with this surface mineralization? Does that vein link with this vein? We were seeing so many different styles of mineralization, so much sulfide mineralization, that even early on when we weren't hitting necessarily ore grade holes, we knew that there was something substantial present in the work that we were doing.
Awesome. Let me ask you, so one question, you guys got any plans to put some pictures of that core out now that you put some assay results out? Secondly, Matt, why don't you go into a little bit of where to from here?
Yeah, so I think that, I mean, we threw those core photos in on the press release just to show kind of what these milky quartz veins look like, and kind of the concentration of sulfides. And then in our October press release, the fun core photo we had was the massive sulfide kind of really narrow, 0.35 meters. But it's pretty fun. That was 29% zinc and 1,500 grams silver, and I don't know what it was, 5%, 6%, anyway, big grades. But And like Kelly said, like this is, it's driven by silver, but it's a true polymetallic system. And I think like the where to go from here, it's worth noting that just again, like the events of the world right now kind of are really pushing for people the importance of domestic supply and kind of looking within and making sure you have your own, access to, let's not even call it just critical metals, anything. And I think that what makes this special is that there's silver driving grades, but also you have that copper, the zinc, and the antimony, which you need for any electronics, basically, here in Canada. And you're 30 minutes from an airport, and you drive off of a highway, and there's power and water, and it's flat. There's one area between the soil samples. There's a little bit of a valley with water. I mean, like if you walk the project, you kind of think like this is a dream for a mine. The community around us is awesome. Like these people are wonderful people, supportive of this, want something to come into the area. And I think that like can't overstate that enough in terms of how important that is in terms of building a mine in the future that could be this big with this high grade in a wonderful place to access in Canada, right? So I think the where to from now is you got to prove up that the grades continue and then the widths broaden. And I think, like we said earlier, it's kind of like this first drilling program is kind of like a map so that we can push forward. And you threw into the beginning, it's a modest valuation. I mean, I guess, modest, yeah, for sure. I think we are like a $9 million enterprise value today. We have $12 million market cap, I think, with $3 million in cash. It's $250 a meter, all in, being conservative. That includes geologists, and that's a real $250 a meter. This is, we are not in a rush to raise. We can drill this thing ourselves. It's not running around to market for $30,000, $40,000 checks anymore, right? Like this thing is big enough and special enough that we're going to drill this thing. We think this thing's chronically undervalued at the moment. If you look at things, in places like even the US, and then you look in places like Mexico, and you have these narrow vein systems that people get really excited about. We're just in this completely new place in Newfoundland for silver. It's like a novel thing. And the delays in labs for sure made an impact. So I'm going to really make an effort to get out there, tell the story, make sure people understand what's going on, because we really think this is a pretty cool project. And I think that, again, at 9 million, your downside is pretty limited for some pretty big upside of a world-class project.
And when do you think there might be some more drilling, Matt?
So we're just putting that together now. One of the benefits of the delay in assays, is you got to spend a lot of time looking at where you want to drill. We're kind of just finalizing what that program is going to be now. I think that, again, where we are right now, it's March. There's no reason to rush through the winter. You could drill right now if you wanted. We'll wait until kind of just the snow melts and get in there again, kind of like mid-late spring sort of thing. And then the plan would be that we're just, we thought we were going to do this last year, but we did really have to wait to see like what these sulfides grades were. Visually in this core, we could be like, yeah, this looks great. And you use an XRF gun and you get, 10,000 silver equivalent, but that's a waste of time. So, because that just doesn't help. And so I think that we had to wait to see what these grades were. If we knew, now that we know kind of the concentration and what you're looking for, like you don't stop. If you hit this, you keep going. So we would have kept going in the fall, because you can keep drilling through the winter. It's no problem. So we're going to take our time, put this program together, and then don't really plan to stop. And ideally you're drilling out down plunge along strike down here in the Heimdall zone, show that this thing thickens up a little bit, broadens up a little bit. The grades hopefully keep going. Actually, probably we're kind of expecting that as we go down that they keep going up, and then do it again and kind of test out those other pearls.
It sounds like, once you get rolling again, you can pretty much look towards most of 2022 being drilling.
Yeah.
Because then you can winterize your camp and get ready for colder drilling season.
Yeah, and 23, to be honest, Allan. I think that like this we have a terrific shareholder base, good access to flow through funds if needed, and really supportive shareholders that have been around. So there's no stress. People are in this for the long term. They understand, and everyone's kind of excited for us to get going here. And yeah, like once we start drilling, that's the plan. You just kind of keep going, right?
Okay, Kelly, I wanted to close it off on a couple of things. Sorry, I didn't see the core pictures. And they
Come
look
on, those
I
are
spent
pretty
a lot of
cool.
time on those, Alan. How dare you?
I know, look at all that quartz and that big blobs of sulfides. That's some pretty nice looking stuff, and you're just getting into the system. That was one thing I wanted to talk about, the core pictures, but also I forgot to ask earlier, how much of that 12 kilometers does this drilling that you've already done represent on that system?
0.0 something. It's about 350 meters of strike that we've I would say sufficiently drilled. So a huge amount of strike potential to test. Also, the geochemistry from surface, it's compelling. It looks like there might be something. So we're testing basically the contact of our host rock, which is the dolostone, and to the west, which is the argillite, which is barren, or we think barren. But the geochemistry speaks to potentially repetitions of something on a parallel nature. So that's something definitely that we're going to be testing this year as well, is testing. They're not as strong, so perhaps the mineralization might be a little bit deeper, but definitely want to scout on those parallel geochemical anomalies, because if you can replicate this not only along strike but also along width, that is really exciting to me.
And Kelly, was there any indication when you look at the sulfides at surface relative to these bigger blobs that you're seeing in the core? What I'm asking, I guess, is, are you starting to see the concentration of sulfides getting more significant now that you're in with the truth machine?
I would say yes. We're seeing wider veining that's more that has mineralization spread throughout, like some of those photos in that press release in the drilling that we're not really seeing on surface. There's a lot of the veining is honestly on surface, it's wild, but it's not always well mineralized. So you're not always seeing sulfides tied in with those near surface veins. You also have on the surface quite a bit of oxidation. So you have malachite, azurite, all these funky sulfosalt minerals that I couldn't name if you paid me in a final exam. But there's a very different visual mineralization happening at surface than there is. Surprisingly, the oxidation is only about maybe not even a meter, but there's basically no oxidation of the underlying rock, which I was a little bit surprised about. I thought there was going to be a bit more penetration of that surface water into the carbonate, but no, it's very much that black sulfide that you're seeing, along with some honey yellow sphalerite and a little bit of galena. But usually the galena is interspersed with everything. So typically what you see is that blackish looking blob and agglomerates of a mishmash of different sulfides all together.
Well, I was very fortunate to have a mentor in geology, Bob Darney, who's no longer with us, but one of the things that he would say, remind me of often is, there's a lot of arm waving in the surface sampling. And a lot of times when you go deeper with your truth machine, that the arm waving gets much narrower. If you're seeing just little indications of sulfides at the surface, and then you just go down a little bit and you're starting to get bigger chunks of that in your drill core, that is passing the Bob Darney test quite handsomely.
I like that test. Yeah, I think he'd give us a solid stamp of approval.
Solid stamp. Because Alan, I think that the big thing is on surface, you're seeing like these 10, one of the big worries actually of a lot of people when they came onto the project over like the 3 years of prospecting was that what you saw on surface when you saw the sulfides and outcrop is like these 10-centimeter veinlets, right? Like you're these small little quartz veins that it's like, I don't know what we're gonna do. I mean, in our scout drilling program, we tried to drill a bunch of them, and it is quite hard to hit those things. That's why I think we got so excited about this, is that you're hitting real veins.
Me too. Yeah, you always want to see it not go from this to this.
Yeah.
It
Totally.
seems to be the other way around, Kelly. It's kind of like you started out here, and now it's kind of getting more exciting as you do some of that near surface drilling.
Yeah, I think so. And look, it's super early in this story in the project. The one of the the great things about it though is the wealth of data. So we've got basically the whole project is fully covered in soil samples. Full project, I would say, is largely prospected. All the good areas have been largely trenched. IP has been done. Gravity has been done.
Wow.
Downhole EM has been done. On surface EM has been done. LiDAR has been flown. High-res air photos have been flown. There's more. Wait, there's laser mapping of sulfide mineralization has been done. Microscopy work has been done. Laser ablation of minerals has been done. The level of knowledge here is extreme, and what's really cool about that is it's changing day by day. And the great thing about the fact that there's that much information is the government is taking a look at this. We've had government geologists presenting on this project. Specifically, we had a Memorial University professor who did the 43-101 here, as well as a lot of the mineralogy work. So there's real science going on here, and that science is paying off, and that's what this last release showed us. I think there's a lot more to come from Sail Pond. I think we're going to have, fingers crossed, even some better stuff to come. But the fact that we hit on, I don't know, 70 or 80% of the first ever drilling program on this property is pretty special.
Well, initially when we started this interview, we were going to kind of try to keep it down to 10 or 15 minutes. It's gone a little long. You guys have been very generous with your time, but you got a lot to talk about here.
And we're going to be getting ourselves out quite a bit more over the coming months as we ramp up to the next program. So we'd love to chat again, and happy to go into things in more detail or less detail. You let us know.
Well, Kelly, I'm pretty good at spotting things early, and I think I've spotted another one here early. And again, Matt's got a cheap valuation. Why don't you close it off, Matt, and then I'll do a closing.
Yeah. What do you want me to talk about?
We pretty much covered it all.
I think we covered everything. Look, I think that if you're looking at, I'll do a quick marketing pitch, I guess, which is I think when you're looking at juniors, you're looking for the highest possible upside with the lowest possible downside. And I think that, if we're going to really simplify it, and I think that, the highest possible upside here is a world-class deposit, and in a country that's safe, where you're not going to get it taken away, and that you can get to where you're not going to have issues building it if you actually find something. And I mean, the downside here with the $9 million enterprise value, with good access to capital, with a team that knows what they're doing and isn't going to spend money on traveling to build a house somewhere, I think it's a compelling valuation here, and I know that's why we're excited about it and looking at buying stock and things like that. So
awesome.
For that.
I'm going to close it off, guys. Hang around and we'll have a chat at the end. There you go, folks. I mean, I think we made a pretty good argument of the compelling opportunity that is here. I started off by saying this has a modest valuation, and as Matt was good at pointing out, they almost have a third of their valuation in cash. And now they've shown that this is a highly prospective, multi-kilometer structural story with tons of work. Early drilling with the Truth machine has definitely come up with excellent results. And I think that that's going to lead them to a lot more great results coming forward. So I think it's time to take a real good look at this one. As always, my shows are for information purposes only. It's important for you to do your homework. One of the places I would invite you to do that homework is the presentation that they put together in their last news release with the grades. those core pictures stand out to me. Look at their the work that's been done, and it has exposed a long strike of the right kind of rocks. And stay tuned for more of these interviews with Sterling. I like what I see. I'm a big bull on silver. I know how hard it is to find good silver stories, especially one with this kind of valuation and the prospects they have going forward. So we'll talk to you soon, and thank you very much for joining us today.